Now we have a good crowd trickling in. So I might just introduce myself again, and Katie and our guest speaker today. So I'm Niamh Quinn, and I'd say for the 10th time I've said it this week. I'm sure I've all met you before, and I'm joined by Katie Flannery, also in the international office.
Hello again, everybody.
And our guest speaker today is Jim Connolly. So Jim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jim. I'm from the English Language Centre here at NUI Galway, and we offer support in the learning of English and the use of English in academic settings at the university. So potentially I'll see you for some in-sessional support workshops during the year. And today we're going to have a 70-minute workshop or session. I guess with so many people, it might not be such a workshop, but we'll have a session together where we're looking at plagiarism and avoiding it and using citation properly.
Perfect. And just to give a bit of reference or why we decided to hold this workshop, one thing that students have said to us time and time again before they come to NUI Galway is that they would have liked insights into how to cite properly and how to write academically. So Jim was kind enough today to hold this for us. So Jim, if you want to fire ahead.
Okay. I'm using two screens, so my camera is here and my main screen is over here, so it might not look like I'm looking at you at the moment. And actually it looks like you're not looking at me because I can't see your faces. So I'm talking into the blank black screen that I have in front of me, really. But I'm going to share my screen with you. I'll share the whole thing. And hopefully you can see what I can see, which is the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so let's start our presentation from the slides. Right, now as Katie has said, knowing how to cite is really, really important. And that's really what we're trying to look at today. And we're thinking about how we can cite sources of academic papers or in academic settings correctly, and why we would do it, and what's the whole purpose of this. And some people might think, oh, it's not that important. Hopefully today we'll recognize that it's relatively important to do this. Okay, so let's just try and organize this a little bit better on my screen so it's a bit more comfortable for me. Okay, so the topic here is called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, and it's a bit of a big, it's a big title, It comes from someone called Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, you could say. He was an Englishman, and way long time ago, he introduced or founded what was called Newton's laws. There are 3 laws, and maybe some of you are going to go on and study physics or have already studied physics and are aware of them. But for a while, he was challenged by someone called Robert Hooke, who was also a very famous scientist at that time. And they had a lot of correspondence together because at that time, as you can imagine, there were no electronic journals. In fact, there were no academic journals at all yet. The way that academic science was progressed at that time was that people would write each other letters. And in one letter, Newton said to his competitor, if you like, I have seen further, and that is because I've been standing on the shoulders of giants. I have learned from other people. And that's basically what we do in academic study. We learn from each other. So if you imagine you are the smaller person here, let's say, standing on the arm or on the shoulder of the whole academic community that has gone ahead of you. And if you are writing something, and the idea that you're writing is probably something that you've read somewhere else. So if you read it somewhere else, that probably means that it's not originally your idea. The idea of citation is to let people know where you got your information so that you look more credible and so that you look more academic. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. Right now, so we're thinking about citing published work. That's our focus today. We need to base our writing on the research work that others have done. That's very fundamental. If you're an undergraduate student, you're probably not going to do primary research yourself. So if you're talking about a topic that you've read about and you write some material about that, write an essay about it, you should cite where you got the information. So how can we do this effectively? Well, we're going to use referencing verbs. We're going to paraphrase what authors have said, and we're going to use what we call in-text citations. Okay, now it's a little bit of a one-way street here at the moment, but I'm wondering, does anybody have an idea what paraphrasing is? Could you perhaps use the chat to write down what you think paraphrasing is? Could you just give me a definition of paraphrasing? Write it in the chat, please. What do you think paraphrasing is? Right. Put other ideas in your own words. That's it exactly, right? So the ideas of other people, exactly, Tarek, having the same main idea, but your own words. Grace, yes, using other words. So it's about using other words and other structures. That's right. And you're writing in your own words. That's the concept. Okay. Now let's think a little bit about how we can do this in a more precise or exact way. Right, we're going to think about how we can write summaries or quotations or paraphrases, and we're going to introduce them with a reporting verb. For example, it could be something simple like Smith, 2009, argues that, or Yanovich claimed that. You can notice that one of them is in green and the other one's in sort of navy blue. The green one is in the present tense and the blue one is in the past tense. So there's a difference, right? I wonder what the reason for that might be. Well, one of them is 1972. So perhaps that's a little bit out of date. So instead of saying claims in this case, we're saying claimed, because perhaps there's new information since then. 2009 is also a long time ago. So why wouldn't we write argued instead of argues? Well, the reason for that is because Smith's ideas might still be valid. We think that his ideas are still valid, that they still make sense and it's possible to agree with them. And so we're using the present tense. So it suggests that they're still valid. The past tense indicates that the source is older and that it may be out of date. Okay, so that's a choice that you make when you're using referencing verbs, or you could also call these reporting verbs. Now I'm going to show you a big long text next. And in the text, it's all about vegetarian diets. You can see at the very top, right? So vegetarian diets have become popular in some cultures today. And that's true. A lot of people, my sister, my nieces, even one of my nephews is now a vegetarian. Lots of people have become vegetarian. It's very popular in Irish culture, maybe also in your culture. So there's a text here, and it's all about a relatively simple topic. But to make it an academic text, we're going to try to identify some of the reported ideas. Can you see any reporting methods in the text? All right, now it's a little difficult when it's just black like that, but if we highlight some words in different ways, you can see it has been argued that there is no strong reason why a vegetarian diet should be deficient in vitamin B12. It's a very important vitamin for our diet. But she says, the text says that vegans are at risk of B12 deficiency, as well as the essential mineral calcium. So that concept, then, it comes from Trustwell. So the argument that's been cited here, it's not just like I heard this in the cafe or I heard this when I was talking to my friends. It came from someone called Trustwell who wrote about it in 2003. And this 39 here, that's the page number. There is, however, widespread agreement. Oh, agreement, right? So who agrees on the certain health benefits? And the idea here is that it's Mann, who wrote in 2007, page 302, and Langley, who wrote in 1995. They both agree. Trustwell and Mann. Ibid also explained that the lower rate of coronary heart disease in vegetarians could be due to lower levels of saturated fat in their diets. Okay, now this Ibid, that's a kind of interesting expression. You can see that it's in italics because the reason it's in italics is because it comes from Latin. So it's not the English language, and it's an abbreviation. That's why we have a full stop after it. Okay, so it's still Trustwell and Mann. It's the same people. And we're saying that it's from 2003-39. That's why we say IBID, meaning it's the same citation exactly as the previous one. Okay, this finding suggests that, seems quite nice, that's Langley's finding, suggests that. And one further area of agreement is that, and this comes from Geisler and Powers in 2008. So you can see that we're introducing it in different ways like that. Okay, let's take a look at them in detail. It says using the verb in the active form, right? So we're reporting with argue and suggest, and it says Trustwell argues that. This is active because Trustwell is the person who does the arguing. Sometimes we use an impersonal form with it. You can use passive there. So it has been argued that. So this is the same idea. It's still from Trustwell, but we're using a different structure because we want to make our text a little bit more diverse and have a variation of structures in there. And the last one is, you can see we can use a noun form of the reporting verb. So this time we're going to say there is or there has been. The example is there has been considerable agreement about vitamin B12. But you also see that after this noun argument, after the noun of argument, we still have to write the name of the people who said it as Trustwell, 2003, page 39. Okay, right, so we've got three different structures: active, impersonal with it, and using a noun form. Right, now we also mentioned already, we talked about IBID. We said it's Latin and that it's taken from the same source and the same page as the previous citation. Et al means, if I don't know how your Latin is, but et means and al means others. So, and others. So it's like one writer plus a group of other writers who wrote together. So instead of writing all the names, we just write down one of the writers and et al. And opposite is very similar to IBID, but it means that there's a different page. It's not exactly the same page, but it's the same author and it's the same text. All right, now let's take a look at how we can actually use different reporting structures. Question is, how could you rephrase these citations that are coming up now using different reporting structures? The first one says, there is, however, widespread agreement on the certain health benefits of a vegetarian diet, particularly that vegetarians are less likely to suffer from coronary heart disease than meat eaters. You can see it's from Trustwell and Mann. And they're one group. There's another group, though. You can see the semicolon here. There's another citation after the semicolon, and it's called Langley. That's the name, the author of the second journal article that was written in 1995. So a way to do this in a different style might be Trustwell and Mann 2007 and Langley 1995 agree that a vegetarian diet has certain health benefits. So that seems to be a nice way to paraphrase that particular citation that we had. We're using a different structure. Okay, what you might notice also is that in the first one, Trustwell and Mann are inside the brackets. That's because they're not actually part of the sentence. It's a non-integral citation. So it's not part of the actual sentence. Whereas in the second one, in the blue box or in the yellow box, Trustwell and Mann and Langley are part of the sentence, part of my sentence, because those two agree that. So they're part of the sentence, so they're not in the brackets. And the brackets are the in-text citation. They show that Trustwell and Mann wrote in the year 2007, and it was on page 302 of their text. Okay, here's another sentence. This time it's active, right? Trustwell and Mann also explain that. So what could we do in this case? What do you think we might be able to do? You're probably thinking we could perhaps use a noun structure, or we might use maybe an it structure. Let's see what we've got as an example. You can just say the actual sentence. The lower rate of CHT in vegetarians could be due to lower levels of saturated fat in their diet. So that's the idea. That's the sentence that shows the idea. And then we have Trustwell and Mann IBID, because it's the same citation as the previous one. We have that in brackets after the sentence, so that the reader knows where I got the information. Okay, so the second thing I want to show you here is that there's a full stop, and the full stop doesn't come after the word diets. The full stop comes after the bracket to show that the sentence is related to trustful and man citation. So they're part of the sentence, but they're not part of my actual sentence. So we have a full stop and then we start the new sentence there. Okay. Now, if you make the presentation slide available. If someone's asking me, can I make the presentation slides available afterwards? Yes, I intend to do that, but I'm not going to give it to you just yet. We'll do it afterwards. At the moment, I'd like you to concentrate on my slides. Okay, now here's a third sentence. It says, Langley stresses. I wonder if you could put another word in the chat that has the same meaning as the word stresses. It's a verb in this case. What other verb could you use that has the same meaning as stresses? Could you write that in the chat, please? Oops. So I'm trying to control my chat box at the moment. I can't actually do it. Yes, here we go. Right, so put in other words, okay. And we're looking for words with the same meaning. Emphasize, right? Not emphasis. Emphasis is a noun, so we're looking for the word emphasize. And because it's Langley, that's just one author, it's a person, so it could be she. She stresses or she emphasizes. Emphasizes, yes, okay. Highlights, very good. Okay, so Langley highlights that. That's quite good. Emphasizes, right. Outlines. Outlines is a little bit different, Yusuf. Outlines means that they show the main structure, but not that they're emphasizing a particular point. So it's a slightly different meaning. We might have a look at that in a minute. I think Akshay has a question. Would you like to ask me a question, Akshay? Akshay, I've got your name right? I think you got your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question? You can turn on your microphone. No, maybe not. Maybe I'm making a mistake. Okay, let's continue. Right, so what we're going to try to do is figure out how we could paraphrase this Langley sentence, and we'll look at it here. So the same idea, you just give the actual sentence, diets high in animal protein are also high in saturated fat. That's the idea that Langley had, and we just put Langley 1995, page 18 in the brackets afterwards. Okay, so these are different ways of citing the ideas that we had. Now, one of the things you have to do, of course, is to select. Now, you could see there's a difference between outline and stress. They're different. And here we have also got different words. Let's see. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to find the reporting verbs that we can use that show our stance. So let's say sometimes they say something, sometimes they talk about something, sometimes they think, sometimes emphasize, sometimes show, like they show it in a figure, or they show it in a diagram, or they suggest. And of course, suggest is a much weaker word than emphasize or say. Right, now here we have some words. And we're going to try and think of words that have the same meaning as say. What do you think could be? Maybe you'll use the chat again. What could have the same meaning as say? Right, state, very good. State is the same. Can you find another one with the same meaning as to say? Point out, right, very good. And the word affirm, that's a good word, but affirm is a little bit like agree. It means that they're agreeing with somebody else, right? So state and point out, they seem to work quite well. Let's think about talk about now. What are words that have the same meaning as talk about, right? Discuss, talk about and argue, not quite the same. Not quite the same. Speculate on. Okay, speculate on is a little bit different. Speculate on is a kind of thinking process. So maybe speculate on is a bit like think. And another one that has the same meaning as to think is maybe feel. Right? So, or believe. They're quite similar. Right, now emphasize we said was a bit like highlight, and it's a little bit like stress. We had those before. What about show? What's a meaning? What's a word that has the same meaning? So illustrate, very good. Illustrate, also demonstrate, right, Gabriella? Demonstrate, Grace, that's correct, yes. Okay, so demonstrate and show. Depict is quite a good one too, but it's not in our list. That's right, quite nice. And then suggest will be the ones that are left over. Suggest is like, this is what they think, and usually they might give some details about that. So it might be argument. Now let's take a look. What I've got here is something slightly different. I've added the word contend to say. So they state, they argue, they contend. They're a little bit like say. That's what they say. And if they argue it, they give lots of reasons why that's true. Talk about, like, discuss, think and believe and feel. They're pretty much the same. It's going on in our head. I also said speculate on. That's a little bit like to think, but if they're speculating on it, then they're also suggesting something. And shows like indicate, illustrate, demonstrate. Okay. Point out. Do you think that I've got point out in the right place? It could be to emphasize something, right? But it also could be just to say something. So that it's slightly weaker than to emphasize. Perhaps it could go better under the word to say. Now, we're going to try and look at some examples, right? Can you use a reporting verb to complete the following sentences? What would you say in this case? It has been that a vegetarian diet can have important health benefits. Could you put something in the chat for me, please, for this? Okay, it has been reported, right? Very nice. Okay, argued. I like argued because that's an argument. It's like saying someone has given some thought to this, and they're considering the different reasons, the different evidence that there is to say that a vegetarian diet can have important health benefits. Argued is quite a good word. The word believe, though, is a little bit different, because if you say it has been believed, that means that believe is not like an action. You know, it's not an activity. If you're arguing, you're arguing, you're doing something, you're active. Whereas if you believe it, you're just like, I believe, you know, you don't have to do anything. It's all going on inside your head. So to use the passive structure, it has been believed, that would be a little bit unusual. Someone's written demonstrated. If you use the word demonstrate, that means you've shown it in an experiment. You've used experiments that show that a vegetarian diet can have important health benefits. It's possible, but it's a little bit unusual. Okay, so I've suggested this word, suggested. It has been suggested that vegetarian diets have important health benefits. The difference between suggested and argued is that suggested, again, is a little bit less confident. It's a little bit of a weaker word. Perhaps there isn't that much evidence. Okay, let's try another sentence. What would you put in this one? So Geisler and Powers point out that age is an important factor. That's good. State, they believe it. Yes, that means that it's like, that's the thinking process. Whereas point out is actually they say it. They feel, okay, that's a little bit like the thinking process as well. Demonstrated, right? Again, demonstrated is a little bit different. It's showing that they actually found evidence in an experiment. Okay, and agree is good. Agree is a good word because it means that somebody else has said it and they're agreeing with somebody else who said this. Indicate means they're kind of like pointing to that. That's like it's a fact. So if you say they indicated, then it's a fact rather than something that's their opinion. Whereas this seems to be an opinion because of the word important. It's an important factor. Okay, so a good word here is argue. Let's try number 3. The number of researchers, blank, the importance of a balanced nutritional intake in vegetarians. Just want to point something out for you here. The expression, the importance of a balanced nutritional intake in vegetarians, that's not a sentence. That's what we call a noun phrase. So a noun phrase is not a complete sentence. It's a structure, a group of words that has the same function as a noun, the same properties as a noun. Okay, so what could the word be here? Highlight, perfect, especially with the word importance. They're stressing, it's very important. Okay, emphasize, Good. Uncover. Uncover is like, it's like we've got something new that we didn't know about before. They discovered it. They uncovered it. That doesn't really work so much. I think it's more like stress, highlight, emphasize. Okay, or maybe point out. Let's see what we got here. We got the word highlight. Okay. Gabriella's written indicate. That works. But if you say indicate, Gabriella, it means that it's a fact. The importance of balanced nutritional intake is a fact, not some. It doesn't really work so well here because the word important is usually an opinion. Okay, let's talk about number 4 then. Again, it's Langley. Something how a vegan diet is healthier than a meat-based diet. Now again, we've got the word how. Someone's written reiterate, right? Reiterate means that they stress that, yes. Okay. Now you've got to be careful with the choice of word because this time, again, we've got a noun phrase. So because it's like how a vegan diet is healthier than a meat-based diet, that's like a noun. It's not a sentence. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky. Maybe it's something like they're saying, hey, look at this, look at this thing. Or maybe point it out, that's good. Anything else? Pontificate, I don't think so. Pontificate's not an academic sort of word that we would use. Pontificate's a little bit like somebody stood up and he's saying, I'm wonderful and our system is the best and ha ha ha, we're great here. That's pontificate, that doesn't really work. What about something from our table? Yeah, illustrated, or suggest, or something like that. Illustrates is quite good. Now, some people have written demonstrated, that's good, but think about the past tense and the present tense. And we said that if you're using the past tense, you think that it's out of date, it's old-fashioned, it's not really valid anymore. But if you're using the present tense, like illustrates, then we're considering it to be valid. Okay, good. Now, so we can see we're choosing the words depending on the sentence that we've got and depending on what we want to say about the relationship between the author and the sentence that we are paraphrasing. Okay, now that leads us to the question of, do we quote, do we paraphrase, or maybe do we summarize what the authors have said? Which of these things should we do? If you're using a quotation, then you're using the exact words taken from the source. It's usually, it has to be marked with these quotation marks. Quotation marks are usually 2 of these things. I'm sure you've often seen on TV, people going like, the 2 of these. So that's inverted commas, but you can actually just use 1. You don't have to use 2. That's a choice. If at the beginning of your paper, you use 2, the next time you do it, you should use 2 as well. You have to be consistent. Okay, so that's a quotation. You can also have a paraphrase, just like you said at the beginning. You're showing your understanding of what the source has said, and you're probably trying to use your own words, your own structures to give the idea. You have to give a citation, but you do not have to give the page number in what we call Harvard referencing system. There are different referencing systems. We'll talk about that at the end. Okay. And the summary is where you have like an overall understanding of the key idea. So there's a page or a couple of pages in a chapter, and you're just going to take all that information and put it into a small section of 1 or 2 sentences where you summarize all that information. Let's see some examples. So here's the quotation. Smith states that, and the word we're choosing is state because it's a statement. The council spends £3.3 million each year on biofuel heating rather than 7 million it would spend if it still relied on oil and gas. So that's a statement with the quotation. Here's a paraphrase of the same thing. Smith highlights that 3.7 million euros or pounds is saved on heating by the council from changing it to sustainable biofuel energy. So this is completely different words, but the idea is the same because we subtracted 3.3 from 7 to get 3.7. So we're doing a kind of little bit of a calculation in our heads, and we're expressing the same information using different words and a different structure. Okay. And of course, as a writer, you also have your own opinion. So you're probably using Smith's idea to show that you think it's better to save money. You think saving money is a good thing. Okay, and here's an example of a summary. This time we're taking the whole idea from Smith's writing, and we're saying Smith suggests that the council could save millions of pounds on heating by changing to sustainable energy. Okay. Right, so that's a kind of a summary or a short version of his whole idea over a couple of pages. Now, let's try and do this actively ourselves. We're going to try to paraphrase some information, and it can contain some or all of the following ideas. It has to have a reporting verb, like the author argues that, or the author suggests that. It could have synonyms. So if we're looking for a word that has the same meaning as business, we need a synonym, a word with the same meaning. Can you tell me in the chat, maybe tell me a word that has the same meaning as business? The chat's gone quiet. Enterprise, right? That's a good word, yes. Or something beginning with F. Could be a firm. It could be a company, right? Something like that. Yes, well done. Firm, right? Well done. Okay, Sai, Rohit, you got it. Okay, well done. We've got the word field then. This could be in the university. What field are you studying? Oh, I'm studying in the engineering field. I'm studying in the medical field. Okay, some people say major. That's an American word we don't use so often in British English. In Galway, we wouldn't use that word so often. We wouldn't say major. We could say sector, yeah, possible. Specialization, yes. It could be domain, yes. Area. And in the university, it could be discipline. That's also possible. So what's your discipline is a question you could ask another student. You meet a student and you say, oh, what's your discipline? Oh, I'm studying agriculture. I'm studying arts. Okay, good. Now these are synonyms and we use them when we're paraphrasing. You could have a change in the word form. Now the word form is like you've got a word like organize, that's a verb, and you change it to the noun form, which could be organization. Okay, so we go from organize to organization. It's the same word, it's got the same root, organize, and then organize or organization. Right, so here's another example. The rate of crime rises in inverse proportion to the standard of living. So there's the verb rises. So to make a paraphrase, we might change that word rises and turn it into a noun. What would it be? Something in crime tends to follow something living standards. A rise of, okay, a rise, yeah. With the rise, we usually say a rise in, a hike, growth, yes, okay, very good. Okay, so I'm going to say a rise. A rise in crime tends to follow something living standards. And this time we need more than one word. We need more than one word. Okay, if you say increase, Akshatai, I can't pronounce your name, but if you say the word increase or drop or improvement, sumuk, that would be sumik, sorry, that would be a noun, right? And it's countable. You can have an improvement, right? So if we want to use the word fall, you'd have to call it a fall off. Okay, good, a fall off. And after that, Reshima, you need an extra word, a fall off in living standards. Just like we had a rise in living standards, here we have a fall in living standards, or a fall off in living standards. A dip, okay, a dip, yeah, good, yes. Dip sounds like, you know, you're going to go for a little short swim in the sea. I'm going to go for a dip in the sea. So it's a dip, it's going down, but sometimes living standards can fall a lot more quickly, a lot more harshly. It doesn't have to be a dip, it could be a decline, right? Nice, Kanishki. Okay, right, so you can see we're using these different types of methods to paraphrase. Another one is there is a change in the whole structure of the sentence, just like the one we've seen, a rise in crime tends to follow a fall in living standards. That's a different structure completely to the quotation that went before it. All right, now we said we're going to try and do this. We're still thinking about examples that other people have made. Here we've got two texts, right? You can see that it comes from Davis 2019, and that 93 is the page number. So that's the original text on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, in the darker color, You can see as Davis, 2019, page 93, explains. So that's the beginning. That's the reporting structure. Okay. So what we're looking for is maybe some synonyms that the person uses. So find the phrases in the second text that paraphrase the underlined phrases on the left. Can you see any? For example, what do they say instead of ways? Okay, someone spotted it. Techniques, right? Absolutely. What do they say instead of for millennia? Thousands of years, right? Well done. Thousands of years. So millennia is thousands of years. Yeah, well done. Okay. What do they say instead of we developed ways of speeding up the process? We developed ways of speeding up the process. What do they say instead? The right-hand side. Excellent. More efficient techniques. That's excellent. Okay, well done. And you can see that it's a completely different expression. We developed ways of speeding up the process is completely different to efficient technique. And that's because the word technique is a noun. And academic writing often requires us to use more nouns. So we're switching from verbs to nouns. That's very, very common. Okay, so here you can see it. I've highlighted them in black on the right-hand side. Ways became techniques. Instead of in order to suit our needs, we said we want to see. Thousands of years. And in the 20th century, we said something like in the last century. That's not this century, but the century before. Okay. Right, now you can see it's a complete paraphrase. I haven't used any quotation at all. No quotation. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use quotation. Quotation is okay, but it's a good idea to try and show your lecturer that you understand what you've read by paraphrasing it in your own words. It's a really good way to show that you understood something. Okay, here's a question for you. Why are some of the phrases repeated in both texts? For example, the term genetic modification is repeated. The term chemical radiation is repeated. Why do we repeat some of these phrases? Maybe you can write an answer in the chat box, please. Right. Okay, so I think the two answers we've got so far, they're exactly right. They can't really be paraphrased. They can't really be changed because they're specific nouns, especially nouns. They're specific terms, and they're what we call technical terms. So the key terminology of genetic modification is to use the word genetic modification. You can try to paraphrase it, but you can never be able to paraphrase it as well as that. The other thing is, it's just 2 words. It's not like 12 words or 7 words. It's not a long phrase. So if you've got a phrase of just 2 or 3 words, up to 3 words, and you take it from the original text, and it's a kind of key term, then you don't need to use quotation marks. Now the key number there is 3. If it's more than 3 words, if it's 4 words, 5 words, 6 words or longer, you've got to use inverted commas. But if it's 1, 2, or 3 words that you're copying from the original text, then you don't need inverted commas. That's kind of a rule of thumb, certainly in the Harvard system. And the Harvard system is the one that we use generally across all disciplines at NUI Galway. Or at least you can. Your lecturers will allow you to use the Harvard system. All right. Now let's think about something else now. We're going to think about a couple of sentences, and we'd like you to think about how you could rewrite them in your own words. So here's the first one. It has been argued that there is no strong reason why a vegetarian diet should be deficient in vitamin B12, but vegans are at risk of deficiency in both B12 and the essential mineral calcium. Okay, I wonder if you could take the time to try to write a paraphrase in the chat, please. The chat, one of your own. Remember, you have to cite the author. So Trustwell, 2003, page 39, that has to be in there. And you can change some of the words, you can change the structure, you can use a reporting verb, and you can use some synonyms. This is slightly long, isn't it? Okay, now I'm just changing my screen here because I've actually got this in a Word document as well. So you'll find that I'm going to be looking at the other screen at the moment. It's the same sentence. I wonder how we could paraphrase this sentence. Okay, still waiting for one of your suggestions in the chat if you'd like to try it. Okay, it's a little tricky. Let's try it together, perhaps. We might start off with Trustwell. Okay, so Trustwell, and we might use the word that's been given in the original text, which is argued. Right? Okay, so will we use the present tense or the past tense, do you think? I'm going to use the present tense because I think even though it's 2003, it's still valid. Okay, right. So I'm going to actually, I like this, what you've written, City. I'm going to take this and use it. I'm going to borrow it. Okay, so you've written that Trustwell pointed out, right? So I'm going to go with that, pointed out. So I'm getting rid of my word argues because pointed out is just as good. But if you think it's still valid, we might use points out. That there has been no evidence of vegetarian diet being deficient in B12, right? Okay, that's the first half of the sentence. That's the first half. The second half, though, is this. So we've got to have that as well. We've got to say something about that as well. So maybe you can use the word but again. And then you could talk about vegans are at risk of deficiency in both B12 and essential mineral calcium. This is not about vegetarians. This is vegans. So there's no way to paraphrase that word. It's going to be vegans. Okay. Or you could say people who eat no animal products. It's possible. People who eat no animal products. Now I wonder, what do you think? Would you keep the word vegans, or would you use my synonym or my attempt to paraphrase what vegans are? What would you use? Would you just tell me? Would you use the original or would you use the paraphrase? Vegans. Okay, Johanna's going to go for vegans. Pretty much everyone's saying vegans, right? Because it's a term, right? It's a term that we're all familiar with. And if we're talking about this particular topic, we're going to keep the original phrase. Okay, so vegans. And now they are at risk of deficiency in both B12 and the essential mineral calcium. So vegans may risk, I'm going to say, they may risk, because they are at risk, it's a possibility. They may risk, we don't need of, we can just say they risk deficiency. Or if you wanted to, we could change the word form. We could change the word form to deficient. But this time, because that's an adjective, we'd need a verb to go ahead of it. What would the verb be? Anybody have an idea? They may risk, what would it be? Yeah, excellent, Grace. Being, or that means that they are at the moment, but they also might become. If they're not already deficient, they may become deficient in both B12 and the essential mineral calcium, right? So you could just switch these words around, both in B12 or in vitamin B12. You might notice that in Ireland, I'm using the word vitamin instead of vitamin. That's the way we tend to pronounce it here. And it's B12. Okay, and now you can see we've used the word in after the word both. So we've got to repeat it. Both in vitamin 12 and in calcium. Because the order of the sentence is a little bit different, we don't have to use any quotation marks. Now, I want you to think about the word but. Could we change the way that we're doing this? Could we use a different phrase instead of but? Anybody have a however? Yeah. Okay, if we use however, then we have to have a full stop. I wonder if there's a word that you could use that fits exactly in this position and doesn't change the grammar. No, not although. Okay, although is a little different. Although is like, it's like a surprise, you know. So like, for example, I met Niamh last week and it was raining, but Niamh was not wearing a coat. So although it was raining, she was not wearing a coat. That implies that I'm surprised that she's not wearing a coat because it's raining. But the word but here is not about surprise, right? Maeva's got it. It's going to be whereas. Okay, so whereas is a great word you could use, right? Another word that has the same meaning exactly is also WH. I'm looking for WH word. It's actually while. Okay, so either of those words will do. They're perfect. Okay, next question is, do you think it's a good idea to have the words there in this position? I'm going to call it position 1, right? So I'm going to call that position 1 and I'll make it black. Or do you think it should be in position 2, which is this one up here? What do you think? Should it be in position 1 or position 2? Okay, so there's a lot of support for position 2, and I tend to think that's right, because if you take the word while and you put it in this position here, and let's get rid of this now. It's like saying, Trustwell points out that while there has been no evidence of vegetarian diet being deficient in vitamin B12, vegans may risk. So now the stress is on like, while that's true, well, actually vegans, when you're saying it, when it's in this structure, the stress is going to be on this word vegans. Okay, so that seems to be it's quite effective. I think it seems to work. Something I've forgotten here is you have to say either a vegetarian diet or vegetarian diets. Yeah. I'm going to call it a vegetarian diet, which is a copy exactly of what the original person said. And now there's something that I've forgotten. There's something I've forgotten because you know that the information comes from Trustwell. And I've mentioned Trustwell, but I've forgotten the citation. The reader of my text will not know which of Trustwell's articles it was. Was it 2003? Was it 2010? Which one was it? So I need to put that information. Again, I'm going to ask you, is it going to go in position A or will it go in position B? What do you think? We will put B here. What do you think, A or B? A, obviously. Okay, not so obviously, I think, not so obviously. Some people put it at the end of the sentence. It's a matter of style. If you put it at the end of the sentence, then it's just like Trustwell point out that blah, 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 and then the year at the end. So that's a good way to do it. Some people think that's really good. Other people feel that, okay, well, if Trustwell is the name of the author, then it's a good idea to put the citation directly beside their name so that the person can see it was in 2003. So even though you said A, obviously, I'm going to say A as a choice. Okay, so we'll use the same style as we've been using so far, which is the semicolon and then 39. Right. Okay, and there's a bracket. Right, and there's no need for any commas or anything like that because it's all part of one sentence. Right, so there's a paraphrase. Alex asks, do we need to put the title of the article or book or work the citation comes from? That's a really good question because people want to know what's the name of the book or what's the name of the article. This is called the in-text citation, Alex. Right, so this thing here is the in-text citation. In the middle of the text, that's all you need. That's all you need. However, and this is the Harvard citation system. We've got this bracket with the year and we call it the name and date system. The Harvard system is a name date system. Other people, instead of having that information, they might have a square bracket and then just the number 1 inside the square bracket. Now that's very common in the sciences. This is maybe the Vancouver citation system where we're using a number. And what will happen is at the end of the text, it'll say number 1, and then there'll be the information, oh no, 1, sorry, that didn't work. number one. Okay, so the information, and it'll be all about Trustwell. And then all the information will be there, including the title. That's called the references list. So there'll be a page at the end of your text that says references, like that. And the first one will be Trustwell because it's the first one that occurred in your text. That's in the Vancouver system where you're using numbers. If we go back and we call this again, I think it was close the bracket, and we say 2003, 39, page 39, right? This is no longer the Vancouver system. This is not a numbering system now. This is a name date system. So the name date system doesn't have numbers in the references page. There'll be no references. What you have is a list of all the authors in the reference that were referred to in your text, and they're going to be in alphabetical order. So there might be, for example, Smith is there. There might be example Nihun. I think that's the right spelling, Neve. Okay, so there they are, right? Now the question is, are they in the right order, these citations, these references, are they in the right order? Got Smith first, because he's my favorite. Then I've got Nihun, because I like her the next. And Trustwell, I don't really like him at all. I put him at the end. Is that the right order? Probably not. What we need to do is we need to put them in alphabetical order. So Nihun is going to go first, then we'll have Smith, then we'll have Trustwell. And they'll go in that order like that. And just like to answer your question, Alex, again, the information will include the year and it will include the title as well as a couple of other things that I'm not going to get into right now. I've got another question. Mamdu asks, do both systems work the same at NUI Galway? Right. Well, that depends. That depends on your discipline. So if you're studying arts, for example, inside the whole College of Arts, there are different types of arts. So you could have sociology, you might have politics, you might have languages, you might have literature. If it's a literature system, then, or if you're in the literature discipline, then they'll say to you, okay, you can use Harvard because that's acceptable at our university, or actually we'd like if you use the Modern Languages Association, which is called MLA. And so MLA is one possible system that you can use called the Modern Languages Association. If you're in psychology, which is also part of the arts department, you can use something called APA, which means the Association of American Psychologists, or I think it's American Psychologists Association. So they're both name and date systems. If you're in engineering, you might use the EEEC, I think it's called, which is Electronic and Electrical Engineering Colleges. I think that's what it means. And they use a numbering system, or they might use Vancouver. Vancouver is very popular. It's a system that's with the numbering system that we just talked about, and that's very popular in the sciences, so natural sciences. And if you're from the School of Law, you probably use something called Oscola, which is about law. So the L there stands for law. It's the Oxford School of Law and Associates. They have a special system that's for law students. You'll have to learn that yourself. But generally across the whole university, you can use the Harvard system that's generally applied. And recently I was talking to an engineering lecturer and I said, well, do you guys use EEC? And he said, yes, students are welcome to use the EEC, but they're also welcome to use Harvard if they prefer. So that seems like a very open kind of answer. But I do know that in sciences, they insist on Vancouver. In law, they insist on Oscola. And in the School of Languages and Literature, they insist on MLA. I hope that answers your question. Mandut says, I'm studying medicine. Often they use Vancouver. In medicine, it tends to usually be a numbering system in medicine. Yeah. The idea, Mamdut, is to ask your lecturer. So the Harvard is not the APA style. Okay, APA is not required across the university. APA is required only in the School of Psychology. Okay, good, right, thanks, you're welcome. Now, So we've just tried to do some paraphrasing. Here's another one. It's a bit similar. It's a little bit similar. This time it comes from Peterson et al. You might notice I've made a mistake with the et al. Does anyone know what the mistake is? What should I have here instead of this? Yes, you're absolutely right, PG. It has to be the italic system. So we've got to put that in italic. Oops, that was a mistake. So we're going to call this italics. It has to be in italics, correct. Okay. It's the same kind of sentence. The link between passive smoking and ill health is unproven. There have been many studies that have been inconclusive in this claim. So it's a little bit like saying, while the link between passive smoking and ill health is unproven or has not been established. Now that word unproven can often be used like has not been firmly established. And again, you'll say something like while something has not been firmly established. Peterson argues that some studies have been inconclusive in the claim that passive smoking is dangerous, right? Okay, it could be like that, or you might decide to use a different word instead of while at the beginning. But for the word unproven, a good expression would be not firmly established, has not been firmly established. Okay, now rather than focusing in more detail there, what I'd like to do is think about how we can replace verbs with nouns. I'd like your help with this table here. We've got a verb imply. What's the noun that goes with it? Anybody help me? What's the noun? Implication, you're right. Okay, and you can use your dictionary to find this stuff. Observe will become observation. Okay, my spelling's not so good. Observation. Actually, it's my typing that's not so good. Argument is the noun, and the verb will be argue, as you know. What about claim? What's the noun that goes with claim? Yes, it is claim. You're right. Okay. Assertion. You can see that TION is very common ending. So the verb here is just assert. That's the basic word. Here we have contend. Anyone help? Yes, contention. Okay, someone's helping me nicely here. Thanks a lot. Description we've got, yes. Okay, I'm just reading from your expression here. What about explain? It's explanation, right? And emphasis, that's the noun. And the verb is okay, we call it emphasize. You can spell it with ISE, British English spelling, or you can also spell it with IZE, which is also becoming quite acceptable or quite popular in British English at the moment. When you say emphasis, we tend to say put emphasis. What's the next word? We tend to say to put emphasis on something, right? Correct. Okay, that word there is really important. And when you're writing the verb, we don't use on. We just say he emphasizes the importance of, or he puts emphasis on the importance of. Demonstration, demonstrate, and then statement. Yeah, I just said it. Statement. Okay, sorry. All right. Oops. Okay, now so we know how these nouns are. Now we're going to think about how we can use those nouns. So here you can see we've got the authors disagreeing with each other. Plana from 2013, he explained that the pyramids, I'm not sure which pyramids he's talking about, may have been built in a period of just 10 years. So they're built very, very quickly. That's what Plana said. But in 2007, there was another writer called Ruus, and this has been disputed by Ruus, which means what? Does Ruus agree or does he disagree with Plana? Does he agree or disagree? Yes, Grace, he disagrees, right? Correct, okay. Because the word dispute means that there's a dispute between them, they don't agree. Okay, I wonder how we could put these two sentences together in one sentence. How could we write that in one sentence? Okay, we'll try it. I'm just going to take that and bring it down here. Okay, and we're going to copy it in a way. And we're going to say plana. And plana now has a noun. Instead of explain, we can use the word explanation. Okay, so plana explanation. However, plana needs to have an apostrophe s after it because this explanation belonged to plana. That the pyramids may have been built in a period of just 10 years. And all we have to do is take away this word this and say that explanation has been disputed by Ruiz. Okay, so you can see we haven't paraphrased the sentence completely, but we've taken the word explained and used the word explanation instead and said that that explanation has been disputed by Ruiz. Okay, pretty good. Here's another interesting one. McCarthy, 2008, observed that women use expressions such as So I was talking to my mother, and I went down the street, and we were talking and we decided we'd go to the restaurant, and so this word, is kind of a filler that we use when we're speaking. We use it a lot. But McCarthy had some research, or at least a paper, where he observed that women use expressions such as but this was later proved to be inaccurate. Probably, I think McCarthy was a man. So now let me ask you, how could we put these two sentences together into one? I want to avoid using the word this. What would we do with the word observe? Could you write down the word what do we need to use instead of the word observe? Could you put it in the chat, please? Yeah, right. We're going to use the word observation. Okay, so found is a good word, but that's still a verb. We're looking for a noun now. So let's go with this, right? So McCarthy. So McCarthy, and then we're going to change this to observation. Okay, 2008. Again, we have to use this idea of the apostrophe S, right? So we've got to say McCarthy's observation that women use expressions such as in English more than men. And then we take away all of this, was later proved to be inaccurate. Okay. Now, someone used the word found, right? Or find. Instead of proved, I don't really like this word proved because it's very difficult to prove absolutely certainly that something was inaccurate. There's always a little bit of doubt. It's never 100%. It might be 99% sure, but not 100%. So the word proved is not really a very academic word. We don't actually use it very often. Unless you're talking about mathematics, mathematics can be 100% accurate, but everything else is a little bit shady. So instead of proved, we can say maybe found. Okay, that's a good word to use in that situation. Okay, right. What the problem is that who found this to be inaccurate? So we need a citation here. We don't know who actually found it to be inaccurate. And so the idea would be that you put the name and the date there. Okay, good. Now, we just changed these sentences using nouns. Here's your final activity. I'm not so sure, Niamh, do we have a little bit of time for a final activity? What do you think?
We could do, yeah.
Okay, maybe about 10 minutes. I'm actually thinking about putting people into a breakout room so they can talk to each other and getting them to think a little bit about how they could use different citations in a text. That's what we're thinking about here. And the concept is about should smoking be banned completely in all public spaces. I don't know whether you're probably not in Ireland yet, probably coming very soon. But Ireland was one of the first European countries that banned smoking in indoor spaces. So if you go to a restaurant or a bar, or like a bar where people tend to smoke, that was not allowed in Ireland. If you go to a bar in Ireland, you'll find that nobody smokes inside the bar. And it's been about 10 or 12 years since that happened because smoking was banned in these public spaces where people are working indoors. However, there are some places where smoking is not only banned indoors, it's also banned in public spaces outdoors. So if you're standing at a bus stop, for example, in Ireland, you'll probably find some people smoke at the bus stop while they're waiting for the bus. But if you're in another country, let's say, I think Seoul in South Korea, you might find that you're not allowed to smoke at the bus stop because there's too many people there, and people say it's bad for your health because of passive smoking. The idea would be that it's good, positive, because it's good for people's health. So it protects people's health. Personally, I'm not a smoker, but my friend Tony is a smoker. Tony loves smoking. So he can't smoke in the bar, and he can't smoke outside the bar, and he can't smoke when he's waiting for the bus to go home after going to the bar. Oh my God, poor Tony, he's really stressed out. He feels that as a human being, he has the right to choose to smoke or not to smoke, you know? So that he feels that maybe smoking is an infringement of let's say, human rights. Wow. Okay. So it's kind of an argument between the two sides of this. Should people be allowed to make a decision about this themselves or not? Okay. Now there's our topic, right? Your task will be to think about a paragraph with the following first sentence. The first sentence says, a comprehensive public smoking ban would have a number of serious implications for smokers and for the economy. Okay, so that's the opening sentence. What we've got is a number of different ideas from Smith, from Jones, from Peterson et al., from a bunch of people, right? There's about 8 of them, I think, altogether. Okay, now what I'm going to try to do is I'm actually going to save my document here and close it. And then I can share it with you afterwards. And so I'm going to try and do this. Just takes a minute. There's my document. I'm going to put this in the chat. Just let's see whether this works. Neve, bear with me for a moment. Now here's our worksheet. We just put it in the chat like that. Okay. Sent successfully, right? So you should be able to click on the chat and you'll find the worksheet there. Okay. Just maybe let me know whether it works or not. I'd like to know whether that worked or not. Can you open the worksheet? It works, Rahul. Okay. Oh, nope. Kanishk says no. Mamdou says yes.
I think for everyone that it doesn't work for, it won't save to quick access. So just save it into a separate folder on your laptop because it wasn't working for me in the quick access.
That's great. Good tip. I didn't know that before. Okay, so you save it on your desktop, that will work, Neve, right? Okay, yeah. Great, thanks. And you, okay, what you need to do is you save it yourself. I'm not going to enable editing. You have to download it yourself, and then you can edit it yourself on your own computer. Okay. Okay, good, right. So perfect. Okay, now you guys can open that. What we'll do is we'll put you in breakout rooms, and I'm going to try to do this myself. We've got 63 participants at the moment, so I'm going to make 21 rooms, right? So let's see. Okay, so we're going to have 21 rooms. You'll be with people that you don't know, and the idea is to try to discuss those different citations. Which ones would you use, and how would you construct the paragraph? You don't have to actually make the paragraph. You just need to discuss how you would use the different citations. Okay, give it a go. Join your partners, please. You need to join the breakout room. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to discuss this, please. Or to work on a kind of a small mini project together with a partner. I just went to one of the breakout rooms there, and I could see that there were 2 people in the room, but both people had their microphone and their cameras switched off. So of course, there's no conversation, there's no learning, there's no participation happening in that case. So you've got to be a little brave. You know, you're just about to join university. You're going to be meeting people with whom you'll be studying for maybe 4 years if you're doing an undergraduate program. And if you're doing a postgraduate program, it'll be at least 12 months while you're working and studying together. And there will be lots of group work, lots and lots of group projects. you'll have to make groups presentations, you'll have to make group posters, you'll have to do group work regularly. So it's a good idea to get used to working with other people. Now, I'm not going to insist that you do this in my case, that you switch on your cameras or that you switch on your microphones and speak right now. But remember that it's important that you're a little brave, that you take a step towards initiating conversations, towards offering your opinions, etc. Okay, now we have been looking at the concept of smoking ban, and we've got people who agree and we've got people who disagree. Your job as a student is to recognize who agrees with who disagrees, and then to use those citations and paraphrases to strengthen your argument by citing those sources and including their ideas in your argument. That will make your argument stronger. It will increase your credibility, and it will increase your ability to put your foot forward as an academic student at third level. You're standing on the shoulders of the people who've gone before you. Other people have thought about the things that you're going to think about. So read what they have said and include their ideas and cite them in your papers. Okay, that's all I want to say to you today. Many thanks, and I was delighted to see you in this lecture.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I think the students can all agree that was really valuable. You touched on so much there, and based on the chat, the engagement has been excellent, and I could see everyone saying thank you. So yeah, thanks a million. So we're going to wrap it up if there's no further comments.
Somebody asked earlier about sharing the slides. So the slides are a little bit large for me to share with you here directly in the meeting, just like in the way that I shared the Word document. But I think Niamh is going to put them on on a Facebook page. Is that correct, Niamh?
Yeah, I've already posted them up there. So if you want to go and have a look at them straight away, you can all fire ahead. They're available online now. Okay.
All right. Thanks very much.
Perfect.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Very best of luck with your new engagement at NUI Galway when you start in September.
Best of luck. Bye-bye.